Marty, go ahead and call this thing to order and get us rolling. It's 9:01 now, according to the clock that doesn't tell time. Okay, it is 9:02, Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. Call this workshop to order to continue with the budget process. And the first item of business was the prosecutor's budget this morning. So what items were left remaining on there? We had a stop grant.
The stop grant.
And this is what the notes were.
Wasn't it rather wasn't it take an administrative fee on the stock grant? Is that what it was?
Right, so, and Flo was tasked with figuring out what the stop grant pays for in regards to a clerk's duties.
And I think, if I'm not incorrect, but I think it was the in-kind you were saying was not your match, but it was supplies and everybody else's time frame, correct?
Well, exactly, because what's happening on the stop grant is prior, when it first got started out, our match, I always had administrative costs to meet my time, my supplies, and then when I came back, it's not being met. So I've got 3 departments touching that stop grant with no benefit to the county itself as far as the victims, which is correct, but one department is getting, how do I say it? They're getting travel, they're getting training, they're getting, but it's costing the other departments supplies, it's time.
So Peggy,
And
can you
everything.
explain to me how processing this stop grant, because it's essentially just money that comes into the county, is different than the rest of your required duties to process money that comes in and out of the county?
Well, it's kind of like your on-call attorney, because you're doing extra work, so your department's getting an on-call policy. It's in the same respect. If we're adding all this onto our salaries, we're adding all this information, plus we're doing an audit, we're doing this.
Right, but there's multiple grants and
Exactly.
money that comes into the county.
Exactly.
So how is that different on our end for you to do your required duties as required by Idaho code?
It's the same thing when you apply for any grants. We get administrative costs on majority of a lot of them, we used to. Then all of a sudden it went away. I'm not understanding from the time I left, from the time I come back, that we're not getting any type of administrative costs, because it costs the county money for all us to handle all this new money.
So, quick question. So your time that you'd work on the stop grant as your match time, is that what you're calling the in-kind or no?
Well, I just kind of took the match is about $2,100 per quarter. That's what the match
Okay.
is, about $2,108 per quarter off your match. And I
so-
took 3 quarters because of the supplies and the labor, just an estimate. Supplies from my department, all the supplies, the time from my,
What kind of supplies are you talking
we're
about?
talking checks.
What checks are you writing that aren't just the checks that you're already giving for like our salaries?
We do have some
You have
that like to
expenses all the
Visa.
time. Visa, you have you've got motels, you got Visa that we're checking. You got a lot of stuff that's coming through the payables system on these grants.
And how much are those checks costing? I'm just trying to understand like where
It's time of processing. It's the time of then Perry redeeming them. Then we're balancing all this. These are called indirect costs in a lot of cost accounting. And that is got to be captured within the county because it's costing different departments all this extra work.
No, we're just wondering.
And I mean talking all grants.
Are we talking about the grant that funds part of the prosecutors? Is that the grant, or are we talking about the
Yes.
ILAG grant that's
No.
not?
No,
Stop
this is
grant.
stop grant.
Just stop grant.
Okay.
but it's the same philosophy on all grants. You have an indirect cost.
But you're
Part of
not-
it's not just the paper, like it's the labor and time that each department is taking into it is what
So
they're
are
covering.
you gonna be charging the stop grant or just our office? Cause the stop grant doesn't pay
Just
for
the
that.
office, so that I can kind of capture it, so we know we're getting something in order to capture some of that. It's,
So nothing is gonna be charged to the
Stop
stop
grant.
grant, even though it says stop on here.
exactly, it's just sitting there saying that this is costing, this is a guess what it's costing me and the other departments.
Is it a guess or is it actual cost?
Was based on what your guys' figures from previous. It's based on your in-kind matches.
Can I ask, how
Sure.
much is that stop grant for in the
70, this coming up year is 72,000
72?
ish.
Okay, so it would be coming out of the prosecutor's fund.
Line item.
Line item.
How much are we doing on the prosecutor right now? It's just admin.
6,400.
Yeah,
6,400.
6,400.
And that's not including, the stop grant pays half the wages.
No,
No, this is
it's
totally
added
different.
wages.
This would be something on top of what the stop grant, so we're not billing the 6,400 to stop grant, because stop grant doesn't cover that. That's just her admin fees.
Which is close to 10%. Do we also have, are you charging
Is this,
the prosecuting attorney a regular admin fee?
No. No, but we've got, this is where I'm coming in to saying we got eyelid administration. That I've got income coming into eyelid for the prosecutor's salaries on some of it should be, and we gotta get it captured and advertised so that we know to the public what wages are gonna be paid out of that to the prosecutors as far as, and also the income. And I need to get that information because I don't know how much time you guys are putting in on each grant. Then we have a grant administrator, which is Colleen, and she's been helping with the stop grant. And that's a part of her also, because she's spending time on that grant. And how is that getting charged? It's not getting charged back, so,
I think that's one thing the board needs to talk about is, going forward and how we're gonna fund Colleen's position and how all these grants, if she's gonna do all the grants, what we're gonna do on percentage wise of the grants to fund that position, because right now it's funded for 2 years with the, ARPA funds, so we need to figure out, I think the second year is this next year, right, Dave?
And so that's what's in your 6,400
Mhm.
as well, is
As well.
college.
So I think we probably need to get together and figure out what kind of percentage of what grant she's working on to fund her position as we go forward.
well, see, this is what I'm trying to say. That's why I kind of stuck that, because Colleen, I know, has been working on
Mhm, She has,
Right, but they just said that it's now being funded by ARPA, right?
that.
No, well,
No,
that
that's
was
a-
her, that was the original position.
She's starting-
We've gotta start thinking about.
She's
how
starting
this
to
is
charge
funded.
back to some of these grants,
Mhm.
so that on her labor off of other grants. She's been starting to charge back to other grants that she's laboring on and not hitting ARPA for everything, because you gotta keep them separated.
Mhm.
You gotta keep all these grants separated in time.
so your cost here for in-kind, I guess my specific question would be, instead of calling it stop grant in-kind, it should just be admin costs or in-kind or
Well,
something not
something.
related to, specifically to stop grant, because when I look at this in-kind, stop grant expense in-kind, to me, that's saying,
We can do a different header. It's just that it has to be addressed, because you got Colleen working on that, you've got my office on it, you've got Carrie's office on it.
So I think my question is, we've been charging some departments 5%.
But that's also including a little bit of Colleen's with with not
Yeah,
knowing.
but we're charging close to 10%
Okay.
here, so, you know,
Sure.
consistency problem there. And I agree with you, the title is probably misleading, because what I think I hear the clerk saying is you're talking about capturing admin costs for more than just the stop grant.
Well,
ILED,
well,
And any other grants
Islet's
that we-
not in there. Because I did not have any figures for Islet and how much time. I still don't.
So you're planning on asking for more when you have island captured? Is that what you're saying?
It's gonna have to be, yes. All these grants have to be, you've gotta have a cost on every single grant. That's called cost accounting. So we know if Colleen was
but-
working on them.
By Idaho code, you're required to process all of the funds that come in through the county.
I am processing them all.
Well, part of this is we can't go backwards on some of
No.
these. The grants were written, they were written without that.
Yeah.
It's hard to go back now. Going forward, it
Because
sounds
if
like.
there wasn't a cost, there's not we can't charge the grant itself administration fee, right?
Well, no, but you can do the cost accounting on time on those grants.
Well, when we applied for the grant, was that factored in there?
so for our grant, sorry.
Sorry, you're okay.
So for, try to get to my right page here.
And this is from July, the new grant
This is the newest one that we have.
that
That will-
started in July,
No, this started in October.
October.
So for the financial grant administrator, for time-wise, we're allowed up to 20 hours-ish a month. But I have taken over doing some of those duties, including, like in that
So
email.
how many of your hours are you spending a month processing in the stop grant?
See, there was $9,170.
There was, and not all of that is to go to you because things have changed since then.
Not part of that, no, is that also,
Now that covers my part of my wages as well now.
yeah, is that also, it's kind of an in-kind too for the,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
for the match?
Correct.
Yeah, I think we can acknowledge that we need to think it, when we're writing new grants, we need to think about this covering the county costs. But as far as plopping a fee down just for the stop grant, that doesn't flow with everything else we've done quite. Have you been, I haven't, off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to this. Have we put an admin fee in everybody's budget or just the ones that are outside current expense?
I put everything outside of current expense, admin fees, yes.
Outside of current expense. So we haven't done any inside current
No.
expense.
Because of those, again, we've got, like I said, I seen that we had 9,000 sitting there. When
Okay, I see what you're, okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand.
And regarding what was designated from the grant, 9,000.
We had a public question?
I thought I heard from the assessors that there was no admin fee in the assessor's office.
Not in current expense.
Not
Because
current
he's in current
expense.
expense.
So is prosecuting attorney.
Yeah, I don't know.
So just in the last quarter, my time was, I billed out $1,000 of just my time as match in the last quarter.
So how much match do we have to have on this?
For time-wise, but for the financial admin, 9,000. And if we don't use that, then I can move monies around to cover other things if we need to, but it has to be approved by the stop grant before.
What's the prosecutor's recommendation on this? that we have no charge whatsoever? Is that what your position would be right now? Okay,
And how much cost would it relatively be for what costs was the clerk looking at? But
Well, like I said, I tried to capture Colleen's time in that as well as some of my time and the treasurer's time. Because I seen where I had 9,000 sitting there as part of the expense. So that's what I was after. was some-
9,000?
Well, no, I only took 6. Because I figured, well, 3 maybe be used for.
I-
But the 9,000 wasn't just for that. It was for Flo's time in processing it as well. It's not just for the
Well,
clerks.
see, when I looked, this is what it said, it was the 9,000, it said Tammy Abraham.
It did, but then when you came on in January, I had asked you how much time you might spend on that, and you had said probably not much.
Well, and then it ended up, because I wasn't sure how it was set up, then I went down and I spent a lot of time down into state of Boise, getting everything changed and all that. That was a lot of.
So do we need to go back somehow and bill Stop Grant for additional time for you for the first 2 quarters?
Well, like I said, what I'm trying to do is at least get something back into county general for the supplies and some of the time. That's where I'm coming from, because it's costing the clerk's office supplies, time. And then I had that factor of Colleen, knowing that Colleen was working on that, because she told me. And on her,
So Colleen did help write this grant, that is correct.
exactly.
But Stop Grant doesn't allow for us to charge Stop Grant for her time.
Well, I realize you're not charging the particular grant for that fee,
Okay,
but you're getting benefited from the grant through your prosecuting's budget. You're getting benefits there. So how do you charge Colleen's time against this grant? How do you charge our time against this grant when it's costing our departments for this grant and there's no benefit to the other department? It's just a cost to us. That's where I'm coming from. These grants, if they're costing the other departments, I've got to understand how to put back into it. Because Colleen is being paid by the ARPA funds. And she has stipulated to us on several occasions, she wants to be charging what she's doing on other grants so that ARPA continues to keep flowing, maybe a little longer than the 2 years.
So I think what we're looking at is we need to figure out what your cost would be, what Colleen's cost would be. But right now, you know.
I'm not trying to charge it to the grant,
Yeah,
but I had 9,000 sitting there with Tammy's name on it. That's
Yeah.
where I was coming from.
okay. And that was the 5% that Tammy was, or were.
Well,
Don't know.
She
No,
she
it's-
went actual time, I think, on this.
she did go actual time on this grant. So it went from Keisha being the financial person to Tammy. When Keisha or Judge Oxendine left, she actually was doing everything financially for it.
Tammy
Except,
was?
no,
Keisha.
No,
Keisha.
well, see, no, actually,
Except for-
Keisha was doing, she was doing all the narrative, I was doing all the financial at that time, when we first started this.
And then you left. And then Keisha came on as the financial administrator. So for those years, Keisha then took all the responsibility of doing that. And the only issue was, for downstairs, was paying the bills or collecting the money or whatever. She did all the reports, she did everything. I currently still am doing all the reports. I took over what they're doing, what Keisha was doing and what Tammy was doing. So I have been doing all of the financial stuff to get it down to you to get the bills paid. And then I send you a memo every quarter. This is my reconciliation of what it is. Please check it to make sure if that's all correct. And then you go in and if it's correct, hit submit. Is that correct? Right?
Yeah, check with the general
Yeah.
manager.
So
Okay.
I'm just looking at future down the
Mhm.
road, should this be something that our grant administrator should be doing, is what you're doing? I mean, what I'm looking at is trying to fund that position down the road. Or is this, are we gonna keep all?
So
everything?
this is what-
The accounting,
The county has to
come-
be,
it has to come from
Yes.
our office because Flo's the only one that knows what things we're working on that apply to the stop grant. So
correct.
she has to
Okay.
go through our keys files and figure out which ones we're actually working on. Because they only apply to certain case
Cases.
files in our
Okay.
office.
And so I do that
So it's a
quarterly.
specialized
Mhm.
grant for,
Yes.
Right, it's only for sex cases, domestic violence cases, mainly the ones that involve victims.
okay.
Highly
violent
confidential,
Yes.
you need to.
So then I just code the bills like I normally would and then send them down for payment. So,
So
And
Flo
then
does
we
the
have to
majority
check
of the
everything, and then we
administrative
have to
work.
tie it all up for Tony at the
I was just gonna
outside
ask, does
auditors.
and then, yep. And then if Tony has questions, a lot of times he will come to me and say, hey, can you open up your book? Sure, absolutely. And, because he has done that in the past, so. If there's ever any questions, he does come to me, okay, I need this, I need that. What was this for? Why does this look like you're in the hole $30,000? Well, we're not, we're just waiting for those funds back from the state, so.
Okay,
So when you go to audit, I have a question, when you go to do the audit, does Tony, does he just go by the hour or does he go per project? So like, does the grants cost more money to have audited? The more you have, the more it costs? Is that how that works?
A lot of times. It depends on how accurate the clerk has on her files, the grant stuff. Because she may have a copy, but I also have copies. So that it's.
Everything I put in my book, I give to the clerk as
You
well.
have to reconcile,
We have
Yes.
to reconcile,
yeah.
exactly.
questions, thoughts? Good.
No, yes, I do, I guess.
Go ahead.
So if we change this more to retitle it to like admin costs to cover additional, we're gonna group anything, if ILED comes up and determines you need fees, they would all be grouped under this line item.
Okay.
Right? Would that be fair?
That would be fair. Like I said, and I think you guys have to determine if Colleen is doing work on other grants, her hours have to be allocated to those grants
To that.
somehow, some way, because you can't charge them to ARPA.
I agree on that.
Or allocated to the department, not necessarily
Yeah.
the grant.
The grant, yeah, allocated, because you're trying to allocate to the ARPA on all of that, and that cannot be, you can't have that type of, that's,
Majority of the grants do have a specific reimbursement for the
Used
time
to be.
put in on it. Yeah, so it would be wise to,
And
that
are
we
they
need to
back
utilize
doing
that.
now?
Well, the thing is, like I said, with Colleen, she's the one my big concern is because she's working off the ARPA grant. And she's swinging her time over here and charging ARPA, that's not right.
Which I understand that, but I guess my big question is are all the grants or all the departments that have grants being charged admin fees?
No, they're not.
No, because there's not that many
Right, so that's
that
our problem.
That's our
is that
issue,
we're being
is
singled out.
we
what
feel like-
other department has the grants?
You have the road department, you have the sheriff's office, you have other grants
Well-
that come into the county.
Yeah, we're the only grant.
We're not the only grant for
No,
the county.
you're not the only
And
grant.
that's why we have.
But that's
Colleen.
what I said, this is the conversation, because this is what we need to do in order to get those charges.
Right,
laid
but
out.
what you're doing this year is that you're
No, I
singling out our
no, I'm not
office.
doing just your, no.
That was our
I've
question.
been addressing these administrative costs since I've been back.
So which other departments have you charged administrative fees for?
Road department,
Road department,
oh, road department gets it big
and
time.
sheriff's department.
Sheriff's department, we've
But
been
they're getting
discussing,
5%.
right,
Trying to think of what other.
But how we gonna,
departments.
that's the other question we gotta really look at is, we're gonna have to talk about whether that 5% is gonna be for strictly, the clerk.
Oh,
and
it
also-
definitely goes out.
I know, but
Yeah.
strictly for that, or how we're gonna fund that grant administrator position going forward.
Forward. Mhm.
And whether that 5% is not including the sheriff's grants or, you know, and I don't know if Colleen works with the sheriff's grants, I don't, so. I mean,
Not,
so we're
the
gonna have to
ones
look-
that I understood she was just going through is off the Les fund trying to get resolved the leasing in
Mhm.
the capital. It was not anything that she's written up.
Okay.
But anything that she's writing up a new grant has to be addressed because she can't be paid on the ARPA grant
Mhm.
and not be charged to the other grants where it belongs. So I guess,
So even the
doesn't-
sheriff's office grants, even if Colleen is not involved, you would still have things for other grants as well that, correct, that you're charging out to other
I'm trying
departments.
to get moving on, yes, I'm trying to get this all addressed in this budget year because of the fact current expense, let's say, because it's picking up a lot of things in current expense, cost-wise, and no income to match it.
For Colleen's ARPA funds, don't they have to be spent by a certain year?
Yes,
Okay. So you have to use ARPA funds now.
I-
You couldn't extend it by adding or using other funds elsewhere.
no,
For the
but I
next 2 years.
can't legally say that she's working all on ARPA funds when she's not.
That's what
and
I'm
charge
saying,
to
is
the
that
grant.
her position is being funded by ARPA and that money has to be spent by a certain date.
Yes,
And so to charge for other grants for funds that will be used in the future doesn't make sense for this fiscal year.
not doing that. No, what I'm saying is if
You
she.
said that you were trying to capture funds for her.
No, what I'm saying is, if she's working, let's say, let's say she worked on this grant. How can I charge the funds legally for work, her hours put against this grant?
So the ARPA funds are being spent for her position, which is a grant writer.
Is for ARPA funds. Grant, ARPA funds
Was it
grant.
specific for ARPA funds grants, or I thought
I
it was
wasn't-
countywide?
Grant administrator.
Greater.
Yeah.
But it's under, it says ARPA on it. That's the way that I read that.
Well, let's try and tackle
Yes.
this one piece at a time. Stop grant expense in kind. I don't like that title. What could we call, if we're gonna try and
Right.
proceed with your idea, then we can go to the amount of what we think is fair or not. But if we're gonna start charging departments who get grants for administration, then what would we call that line item?
Grant
If
administration fees.
that's a little too straightforward.
You just don't
Grant
like that.
admin fees, so. But I
Then-
think we, sorry.
To charge 10% of the grant, I mean, that's too, in my mind, we need to deal with, if we're going to follow Peggy's advice and start to recoup some of our expenses administratively, we're gonna have to come up with a livable formula, and we're gonna have to apply it to all the departments who get grants. But 10% of a grant, that, I mean, we're gonna destroy the initiative to even go out and get grants. If we.
I agree, we need to figure out a percentage. I know the state, I don't know what the state charges.
Eight.
They charge 8.
Yeah.
And due that they're
In
doing.
this
majority
case,
of it.
they're doing the majority of the work in their office on this particular process, acknowledging Peggy's thought process here. In my mind, we ought to be looking at something like $1,000 right now, because we have a lot of research to do, but we're starting we're not starting a new process, we're going back to an old process of,
Exactly.
Again.
See, I used to get, like I said, got money for this,
right. So
for current expense.
I'd be okay with taking a small amount of money to start this and then do this with all departments that get grants, but I don't wanna see us taking 10% of the grant.
A fair formula across for everybody.
I would agree.
So, would that make sense?
Absolutely.
To get this, I keep saying starting this process back, new for us, not for the county, getting back to this process that used to exist. What do you guys think would be a fair start? I'm thinking 1,000 or less, but
What would the cost of that would probably, you know, cause you guys are doing most of it. We're doing you're doing the checks and the audit. So should we do a percentage to start out with, or should we do just?
then we're gonna have to figure out the difference between where she's doing all the work, or in this case, where the department's doing the majority of the work. So we end up having to have more than one formula, or, to me, it sounds like 90% of the work is coming out of the prosecutor's office.
Okay, I see what you're saying. But I still think we need to do some kind of percentage so that if this happens to another office, are they doing, you know, you're doing 90% of the work?
Well,
So and I'm not saying 10%, so let's do like 2% or 3%.
yeah, or we could, just brainstorming, say we
5%.
took the 5% and then divided how much is being done by each office. Say there's 5% there's a $3,600 cost to administering this grant, but 90% of it's coming from their office. So we're gonna build 10% to the, you know, we could do something like that.
Okay.
Something repeat, something we can,
So
so
that's a
reproduce.
formula that's set
So
right, for
so-
each grant.
Are we-
Yeah.
Is
that we're not
Is the
arguing.
state's,
Yeah.
is the state's 8%, does that make sense, the state's 8%, and then go off of that and do 3% or 5%? You know, cause the state charges 8%, so how do they get the 8%?
Right off the top.
Overhead.
Yeah, so, but that's what,
And
I mean,
our-
is that a fair number, or is it 5%? See, that's what we probably need to figure out, is what,
What we used to do, we took the total current expense, and you could probably divide out the amount the grant was from and give you a percentage that way. Less, and account for it. See, what I was going through is, I had 9,000 in my mind because it had Tammy Everhart's name on it.
yeah.
And the bills are coming through, and it's always been coded through the prosecutors, but I'm still doing them down here, and I still got my percentage. Because and payroll and tracking all of it, because we have to track everything. That's the reason why I put down the 6, trying to give you guys 1/4, and then at least I'm picking and recouping that. Then I also had
Helps
Colleen
pay for
in the
computer
midst
work,
of that, because how much narrative time does it take Colleen to do the narrative? Keisha, I don't know, Keisha used to do all the narrative.
And it takes quite a long time.
Time.
Colleen does not do the narratives. I do them.
So what's Colleen doing?
She wrote
How much
the-
time is she writing, spending the time? Because when I talked to her, she said she spent a lot of time on that originally. So
Probably
that's,
2 years ago, but now it's pretty quick and pretty easy. And I give her most of my figures, and that's how she writes the grant. I do all the hard work.
so, but we need to track down Colleen's time. You know,
Yes.
to find
I
out
work
what that
with Colleen
that
with
component is, so that we understand what she's doing and her time amount of it to get that percentage. Because, or is she doing maybe 4%? You're doing,
I don't know. I don't have that answer.
well,
I know that she wrote this grant. I gave her the information. I go over the grant with her. We do a lot of it together, and then she sits down and writes the final stuff. So we have been doing it together. And I give her all the figures to where she knows how much everything
Here's
is.
the formula I would propose. So I would propose, even if we decided to go with the 8%, that we take 8% of the grant, and then we multiply that times the percentage of work that the counties,
Yep.
that the clerk's doing versus department. In this case, I'd say 10%,
10% would be, yeah,
which means we put $576 in this budget instead of the 6,000, but we would be capturing what Peggy's talking about as far as a process where we start recouping.
I would agree with the 8%.
Okay.
So 8%, but then we're gonna charge 10% of that 8% and give the office back for all the work that they're doing. So that would make it $576.
Yep.
And we're starting to do what you're saying. We're starting to capture.
Well,
Grant
like I
administrator.
said, it's a whole, you know,
Yeah, we're making progress, but does that sound fair for you guys? That
Absolutely.
responds to the amount of work you're putting into this thing? Okay, all right. Do we have other questions from the, for the prosecutor's budget that are not resolved?
I think that was the only one that was, that we
Are we
needed.
missing information on phones? Is that because we're waiting on something?
Yes, I've given all that information to Peggy and she's got all that information, so. And were we able to separate out, or have you been able to separate or figure out the computer operations? Like software, all
we're
of
still
that?
working on that.
Okay,
The only thing is now on your eyelid, I need some type of an income and a projection of how much is gonna be spent through your prosecutor's budget.
Okay.
I need the income versus the expense on the salaries.
Okay.
For the next year. So I don't know how much time you guys really spend on it,
a
but
lot.
it's gotta be advertised
Wow.
What do you mean by advertised?
through the budget.
Oh, through the budget, I was like, what do you mean by advertised, because, okay.
Communicated through the budget.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Anything else?
I don't have
That was
anything.
it, right?
Public questions?
Not about the prosecutors.
Okay, we'll keep going, yeah. We got many more. Okay, then we'll go ahead and let you ladies go and we'll continue on with whatever else. Do we have anything else we need to cover today?
I'm still working on the changes
You're
you
still
guys
making
gave me
the-
yesterday.
Okay, and I got you everything you needed?
Yeah, you sent me the hours.
Thank you, ladies.
I met with builder, I met with, the building people today. This is just, Randy and I talking, and I think we've got a kind of a thing regarding,
Do we need to adjourn?
No, we're
No,
continuing. We're still in the budget
Okay.
workshop.
Okay.
what's happening, what I'm seeing is on the lettuce grants and this type of stuff, when you guys are approving a project, and Randy got in a project approved of $2,500 regarding his gate and whatever he's doing here, up to $2,500 from that project. Well, I didn't get that information until today. We got a breakdown somewhere in this communication. When you guys approve that lettuce fund,
You need to know.
I need to know.
So
So
that-
I can watch for it, because,
When
Because
buildings
I
come
don't-
through, they're gonna be-
I don't know.
well, she
Coded.
wouldn't have known because
Yeah.
of Cindy being gone.
Yeah,
And she wouldn't know the projects because she's just doing accounts payable. And that's where we're making a lot of journal entries when I come across these projects. Oh, well,
Yeah, and I'm
just
coding
by
them.
talking, oh, well, I got this, and oh,
Yeah.
well, I wasn't aware of
and,
that.
and that'll cause our,
And then we're going
Over
back through
budget
and
on-
redoing journal entries. So there's a communication. Somehow we need to get a little better regarding, every time you guys approve something off that lettuce fund, someone needs to email me and say, you got this project and this is the amount. And that way it keys me into watching for it.
and that department needs to know to make sure the invoices will be coded, or at least wrote on there what the project was for, so it's coded to the proper.
Coding it fund, because see, I'm not knowing this. Cause I've got so much work, I can't watch all your meetings either. So that is just a little lapse, I think, that we're
How-
having.
How would you like that communicated? Because I think Sydney would be a key person in that.
Yes.
To make sure it gets to
Well,
the clerk's office.
Probably everything that we approved, just forward it.
Forward it
Just
to
to-
me.
Because that's all
That is so
resolution.
Slurpee.
Well, no, it's not all resolution,
Okay.
it's just by minutes,
Just each project. Okay,
each project.
okay.
And that way we're setting up ahead of time so I can kind of see what's going on.
Okay, so I'll make sure that,
Because Timmy and I, we've got a handle on, pretty much on what grants are out there
Right.
and what's, what's going on, so. And we changed that mechanism when I came back. I said, no, it does not go back to the accounts payable girl. I said it comes through us and then we send it. Because that way we know what's
You're
going on.
tracking your grants. So she's gotta know
Exactly.
every grant in the county and be able to track it.
so I told Randy this, I spoke with Randy this morning about coding and such and because he came down and said, I spoke with Peggy's office and so we just came up with what we're gonna do with invoices and I gave him the cost, the account code sheet so he can use that and look, oh, fuel, supplies, whatever.
Right.
And I'd let him know that anything related to a grant, you have to see.
Well, and again, after visiting with Randy, I said, and his background's construction. I said, just think of it as a project.
Yeah.
I said, put it on a project sheet, then I know what's going. Then at that point, at the end of the project, I know if it's met the 5,000, do we need to capitalize it, or if it's just whatever.
Yeah.
I said, those are the key things that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and he's well versed in the bookkeeping and
Mm-hmm.
things
Very
like
well.
that.
Key for
so
our
he's-
inventory too, that goes
He
into
brought
our
me coffee
capital
cakes and-
projects.
Yeah.
You remember the joke over the
Mhm.
donuts? He brought it. Oh, I was.
Now, just a quick question, we've got to get the ambulance budget in.
Yeah,
Already working on that.
Are you? Okay,
Yeah, I did that last weekend,
okay.
and so I'm pretty close to, there's a few things I needed to find out regarding was the ambulance purchases.
Okay.
Of how far they're out there and when
Yeah.
they're gonna be
And they're gonna
delivered,
it's gonna be
because
about-
those are but other than that, it's mostly up there.
And then we have the extra funds that we agreed that we're gonna pay them for, because they actually had more hours,
Yes, they gave me they actually did the figures there, and we checked them, and we added administrative cost on that.
It
We
was like
add,
70-some thousand more that we on fire station one.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
but I also read through the last 2 years audit off of Tony's, and it doesn't look like we're gonna need to go out and levy too much to the taxpayers this year, because they've got too much cash, it looks like to me. But I still have those questions regarding the ambulance itself, so I don't know where that cash belongs. That's,
So we
So-
probably need to have them come in next week, or when do we have to notice this out?
well, we're gonna publicize,
Coincide?
yeah, we're gonna, that third week of next week of August, so, we'll get with, and get it to a meeting to you guys.
Yeah, to review the budget for the ambulance department, so it can be noticed.
Mhm.
Okay,
But yes, most of that's done.
okay.
so we need to schedule a meeting next week to review that before you advertise?
Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that, I thought would throw in with the county. Come right in behind,
Okay.
that's my target.
So, make sure we don't forget
For next
when
week.
we're
Next week.
scheduling.
Mhm.
Okay. All right,
also-
anything else?
We're gonna discuss the weeds department, she sent the spray breakdown, was that part of the budget process?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what she emailed this morning, was
The cost of it?
the cost, the invoices,
Per department.
Oh, okay, for department.
That'll help us get a line item for each department's share of the spraying.
She didn't have roads on here.
Well, she broke it down to Murray Shop, Smelterville Shop,
Okay.
Osborne
Yeah.
Shop, Marble Creek.
I
But-
saw that.
So we could combine them into one line based on.
My question to the commissioner is just, I put 5,000 yesterday, just, I played with some figures, so I put 5,000 in solid waste in the airport, because I don't, airport, they had 5,000. I put 5,000 in roads, but here, then she mentioned regarding county property that was not getting sprayed.
That's part of the stuff up on the
So-
river and the.
And then the costs, he hasn't adjusted his cost to the rising costs of his supplies either, so that'll probably increase next year.
Well, the
So I think
supplies
it would
don't we furnish?
go Out of the chemical.
Yeah, we've got 18,000 that we have in supplies, 10,000 out of roads and 5,000 out of weed budget. So then you have that county property, and she mentioned that, so that's the only reason why I'm asking. I don't see it here,
Because we haven't been spraying.
because we haven't been
And all
spraying,
she's doing here is what we have.
just
been
what we've
spraying.
been spraying.
Do you feel your 5,000s, after looking at these, would be adequate?
Well, I went in kind of high, just so I could play with the figures a little more,
So they
on the L2s,
Yeah.
yeah.
They don't break one.
Right. So, yeah, my 5's gonna cover it out of each department.
Well, more, yeah.
Yeah, more than
We're
that.
only
So
spending
I can,
1,000.
yeah. But the only thing is now you've got to try down, how much property we got out there that we're not getting sprayed?
She did have that list of projects that needed addressed, so
Okay,
She had a whole list.
I'll ask her, maybe when we get out of here, I'll email her or call her, see if she has an estimate of,
that, but,
And
Yeah,
maybe
this
with,
is-
with,
this
we're
was
putting the
helpful.
5,000 in both of, well, besides roads. Because the airport's in current expense, so it'd probably have to be,
it's on its own.
no, but the airport is in our.
it's not in current
it's
expense
not
though.
current expense,
Yeah.
It's on
It's
So
so funded.
It's under the umbrella.
under the umbrella. But what would those properties be under? Current
That's,
expense?
I would assume
do
yes,
count-
because the current expense owns all the land, it's all the assets.
Could we do it in county general to cover the other properties?
That would make.
Yeah,
And
that
I-
would make more sense.
And I was telling Jeff, when I was going through some of county general yesterday, I have 90 grand sitting there to being paid out on building permits. I would assume with what you're doing in P and Z, you want that knocked out of there.
We need to discuss that on what we're gonna do with our
That's fine.
Kellogg.
Yeah, we have that meeting in an hour or two.
So anyway, you got
Okay.
90,000 sitting there in current expense on that. That either needs to come out, I would assume, whatever you're gonna do.
For what department, Peggy? I'm sorry.
That's in
County general.
County general, okay.
County general, 90 grand.
It's a result of what P and Z's
Doing.
permits and whatnot.
And again, it's all inclusive, so you're good.
Anything else? Okay, public comment or question?
Yeah, more questions again. So still trying to wrap my around the admin fee. What is it actually paying for?
I'm gonna let the clerk address that.
Services,
What services?
you got all the computer arts programs, you've got people running them, you've got electricity, you've got, legal sitting here in case someone needs legal questions answered. Admit costs for, people's payroll, retirement, that's all.
Is it going back into the general fund?
Yeah,
Okay. And it's paying for all the different positions for people to be doing things?
it
Like their
is
salary,
for-
or is it paying for something else?
Well, it's paying for any cost. I mean, you've got a lot of data processing costs. You've got securities, you got all that. It's just all inclusive. It's a portion to help fund it all. It's not tied down to one individual thing. It's all in, it's
Doesn't
called
say-
cost accounting. It's an overhead, it's like an overhead in a business.
I get how it could work. I'm just trying to figure out how it is working here, because say you're paying for the grant lady and all that, you're paying for all those funds. But if you take 5% off of somebody's total budget, that's paying for like 3 of those positions in just that one budget. So there, you're paying for that person 3 times over.
No.
Well, you take your top, if you took the 17 million, you put admin fee on top of it, that's $850,000. So that would be covering for pretty much your entire clerkship, everybody in your agency.
It isn't, it's the clerk's office,
It's also the prosecutor.
the prosecutor, the,
And it's a percentage,
ULCC.
it's a percentage of the grant.
That's what I'm saying, if it was a percentage of the grants, that would be fair, but if you're taking percentage off of a total budget,
it's everyone.
Because it,
so the road department, the sheriff's office, all those are not set off of their budget, it's set off of a grant.
No, it's set off their budget.
They're set up their budgets.
So
So
you're
you've got-
taking,
You've got,
right now it's like roughly $500,000 that you're taking off of the top 2. So that's covering a lot of
Well, see,
expenses.
they, it seems like that, but it's not that department's money. I mean, we're
I'm not
not,
saying
we're
it is,
not,
I'm
I
just
know,
saying
but
you're
we're
paying
not gonna,
for,
we're not gonna inflate, you know what I'm saying, like the roads department. You know, if we drop that, that doesn't mean they're gonna have all that to spend. That same with the sheriff's office, if, since they're doing that, and it's $200,000, that doesn't mean that we're gonna give the sheriff's department $200,000 more to spend. I mean, that's
well,
what that is.
it
comes
could
back in.
be in that aspect, because if they had expenses, you're cutting to a certain level right now, you're cutting down right now. So if you add that on top, they have to cut even lower than what they would have cut,
They're
correct?
not cutting right now, they're not cutting wages right now.
No, wages, I'm just saying their budget. We're
Yeah.
cutting down right now on the budget. We're saying, these are the things we wanted, we don't have enough money, we're cutting down to that position.
Well,
By
that's
you
okay.
adding that in, you're cutting them even lower than what they would have. So that is taking away from the budget.
it's not really because they're getting services provided.
That's what I'm saying, I
They're
just think
getting-
those services should be paid for what the services are providing. If you take $500,000, that's covering a lot of services. You're telling me that you're paying for
I'm
their
not-
full wages on
Where's the
On
500,000
10
coming
different
from?
people.
But you've got an overhead sitting in current expense, and you've got a lot of overhead sitting here with retirements. You've got 3 BOCCs wages, you've got all the
But their
clerks'
wages are paid out of their budget. So you're
It is-
paying their
They're
wages
we're
twice.
bringing it over in to pay all of that.
That is part of it. So that, I understand what you're saying, and I wrestle with the amount that we're charging.
But I
But
think it should be just on something, not on a total budget.
there's some of
Say
that,
if your total budget, you buy 10 fire trucks. That budget's gonna be inflated by $2 million. You're taking $5 million, or 5% off of that. It's not going because you're doing services, you're doing because you're buying that thing.
So what we're saying is, what is the cost of, okay, so she's doing all the payroll, and you know what, you understand what's involved in payroll?
That's what I'm saying, so if
You've
it
gotta-
was
you've gotta
payroll, it
pay-
would be
you've gotta-
5% of payroll.
you
Then
gotta-
I would
you gotta
justify,
pay-
that would be correct.
You gotta pay the state, you gotta pay the federal, you gotta take funds out, you gotta pay Percy, you gotta pay the insurance, you gotta keep the insurance premiums up, the clerk does quite a bit for every department. And actually, the prosecuting attorney gives legal advice, and it's back and forth. So really, one of the things with the county is we cannot charge over cost. If we have a fee, that fee has to be exact. We cannot charge a fee that's not proven. So how do you figure out a fee if you don't have costs around, cost included? How could they charge a fee when they don't understand the cost? And that's part of the equation is, I know, it was that way with roads. Roads has been the same way forever. This started with the administration fee, was started by, was last year, I believe, Tammy was wanting to
No,
start.
the administrative cost has been here for
Always there.
years.
Okay,
Absolutely years. And when we even rented and figured out the rent, we went out and we literally did the square footage of each office, so we knew what it was costing. We went out and got what it was costing out to the public at that particular time. So we had all the measurements, we had everything out there when we put these charges in. Now, you keep talking about charging. When we bring it into current expense, we are reducing our levy rates on current expense if we don't need it.
You're
So-
reducing it on that, but you're expending it on the other ones. So it's evening out.
It is evening out, basically.
So you're not reducing the tax levy.
Well, right now.
It's a wash.
It's
So
a
watch,
wash.
you're not saying that you're not lowering it because you're pulling it off of somebody else's.
It could lower it, we don't know yet at this point. But it is a wash, basically.
I'm just saying,
Before
if,
current expense, before they became justice, right, you had, in current expense, you had two buildings sitting in current expense. You had all the departments, you had the sheriff, you had the jail, you had everything sitting in current expense. Well, when you go out to the taxpayers, you can only charge .002 out there on the levy rate. It was busting the levy. So what Tammy had to do, she had no other choice from what the history I'm looking at, that because they put in these systems that were not sustainable. So she had to break it up into justice fund and into current expense. That's what happened, but you're sitting here with two huge buildings at that time in current expense. How do you get money from the other levies to help fund the building, because they're getting services for what's happening inside this building, plus all your electricity, your water, everything, all that costs. That's why you have an overhead in all businesses. You basically have an overhead in all businesses.
and I understand, and I believe that you should be getting money for it. But my justification is, it shouldn't be set off of just the general budget. It should be set off of whatever services you're doing, and then that should be the percentage of it. If it's payroll, then it should be off of how many people are in that position, in that office, because you got
The
100 and some
standard
in the sheriff's office fund, and you got 10 in roads, and you're charging them the same rate. So you're not receiving the same payroll amount, so you're not charging the same payroll, you're just charging off of the full amount.
So your argument, if I could summarize, is that charging a percent of budget is not as accurate.
Yeah, it's
So
not
what
accurate
would you-
representation. You should be receiving money, you should be. It should be just off of what you are actually getting. If it's payroll, then it should be justified off of payroll. If it's your guys' salary, it should be evenly dispersed throughout all the county
Yeah, it's
off
hard
of
to
that.
define, the clerk's office is the soul and glue of the county. Everything absolutely comes through that office, through finances. So there's all services that is provided through the clerk's office, from payroll to
bills.
bills to,
They may only
Um,
have 5 people in a department, but they may have twice the amount of bills too, so that you're working on that.
That's what I'm saying, it needs to be just off of something other than just the total budget, because if you get a grant in one of these offices, it's $5 million, you're taking 5% off that, and all you're doing is processing one grant.
I think that's what we're working on too, is the
That's what I'm saying,
percentages.
seems like you're doing a good job on that one, that was perfect, how
So.
you figured out the percentage and all that, it was good, but the 5%, it seems like the biggest agencies are just carrying the bill for the entire county, and all the small ones, since it's adjusting their things, you're just cutting it off there,
Well, who's got cut? That's what I'm,
the assessors.
haven't really got cut.
Well,
They've got
in
every-
the meeting, you said you purposely, you looked at the numbers were skewed, so you just chopped the admin off. That's what you said. I don't know.
I don't know.
What,
Yeah.
You did assessors because they're in current expense.
Well, no,
That's what I'm saying,
everybody's
there was an admin fee there, you looked at it, you said it was wrong, and then you.
Oh, that was regarding, motor vehicles.
Same thing, they're still
Well,
doing the
motor
same, exact same
vehicles,
thing, they gotta pay her payroll, they gotta pay you guys, they gotta do all that stuff.
Motor vehicles, the reason why I cut that out was because it's all inclusive within current expense. I said it's charging it and then bring it in as income into current expense. It was just a wash anyway.
It didn't.
It
help
was
current.
in the same
It didn't
funding.
help current expense. It was a wash.
So it's just the ones that aren't in current expense have to fill the bill for current expense.
No, because current, I think you need to go maybe get and talk to a CPA and understand on businesses you always have an overhead. And get,
And I understand you should have overhead, but I think it needs to be justified more clearly on what you're actually paying for, not just on overhead over general budget.
Well, like today, we got a formula worked out for something. I think
But just to continue that, the state charges 8%, charges. the
Off of
state-
a grant though.
off of-
No,
well,
no,
but it's
no,
multi-million-dollar grants. I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
when we
but
get fired, if we get fire grants, I think it's, I believe it's
Title
8%.
I and all that.
They charge
For
us a
one
flat
check.
rate, and so we're getting the
We were looking at
Flat
flat
rate.
rate.
flat rate, and it's, I don't know how else, that's just.
But I need to wrap this up, but we're open to
Yeah.
ideas. So if you come up with a,
I do got one thing to try to benefit you guys, this thing. So didn't want to get rid of the airport, whatever. Understandably, you guys got your things about it. Why can't we move it to like we do for the garbage waste, to where it's a fee based? Where everybody that lands there, parks their planes there, has their planes there, pays a fee that fits the bill for the actual thing. 'Cause we're still paying $25,000 out of the levy rate to pay for that airport. So those are the only people that are receiving those services, right? They're the only ones using it.
well, first of all, you've got some FAA regulations. You can't, we can't be the only airport in America that charges people for landing and that.
Not landing, but if you're gonna store your plane there,
We
whatever.
already do charge
They
for
charge,
those.
yeah.
And
So those
that's-
fees should be raised to the level that they're funding the thing, not just a fee
See, they
itself.
build their own, they lease the land, but they build their own hangars. So, like this year, they built, they've been 100 and some thousand or 200, whatever the hangar costs, so they build it. And they just lease the land, that's all it is. The land's leased at, I don't know what it is per square foot, but that's how that works. And then also we have,
The gas and all that.
well, we have the Forest Service out there right now. Shoshone
They're-
County
They're paying
Airport,
for being there.
Yeah, they're paying
So I'm
to
just
be
saying,
there.
we raise it to the
they
level that they
stage
pay
here.
everything, we're not, the taxpayers ourselves are not paying for anymore.
Yeah,
We're not using it, we're not getting
Well,
any.
hopefully with Mr. Dose's, when they went in and they changed that, we're gonna be making more money this year off the Forest Service paying for
The
it.
goal is to make it self-sustaining, but it
Yeah.
does bring in some economic. I mean, we do have people flying in here to do mining business and do things, so there are some other economic benefits to having an airport, but that is the goal, and this year we made like a $50,000 gain on that with the Forest Service, so we're getting there. But I do need to wrap this up, because we've got other meetings.
We do.
Thank you for your thoughts, and thank you, Madam Clerk, for your help. And I think we can adjourn.
Okay.
So